Ah yes, you feel that little tingle crawling up the spine. That's not nerves, that's not fear. That is the door opening. You are not in Kansas anymore. You are not in time, not in space. You are entering the fifth dimension, where the laws bend, where thought becomes matter and matter becomes suggestion. You blink here, and entire universes rewrite themselves there. In the third dimension, you had length, you had width, you had height. In the fourth, you thought you had time, cute, linear time, predictable, a timeline you could point to on a calendar as if destiny wore a watch. But the fifth, oh, the fifth does not ask for your permission. It doesn't care for clocks or calendars. It cares what you believe, because here, belief is gravity. Your thoughts, amplified. Your intentions, reflected. Your shadows, alive. Everything you run from in the waking world is here, sipping tea, waiting to make eye contact. The fifth dimension is not a place you go. It's a frequency you remember, a room you've always been in, but forgot how to see. Look closer, not with your eyes. Those are outdated instruments. Look with your knowing. That dream you keep having, not a dream. That glitch in the corner of your vision, not a bug. That pull you feel when no one's watching. That's the invitation. You are not hallucinating. You are remembering. Up is down, time folds like origami. The sky isn't the limit, it's the introduction. Language unravels, numbers sing, mirrors lie, and truth wears masks. And just when you think you've figured it out, the dimension shows you a version of yourself that already did. The fifth dimension is accessed through consciousness, not physical travel. This idea strikes at the heart of what many ancient traditions, mystics, and modern metaphysicians have hinted at, but rarely explained in terms that resonate across both inner and outer experience. The fifth dimension is not a place you can get to on foot, in a car, on a plane, or even aboard some theoretical faster than light spacecraft. It is not a destination that can be pinpointed on a map or reached through calculation. You do not locate the fifth dimension, you become attuned to it. You do not explore it with your body, you explore it with your awareness. This is the great shift, the radical deviation from the Newtonian world. You, space and time are not the final frontiers. Consciousness is. To truly understand this keynote, one must abandon the conventional idea of dimensions as merely physical directions or spatial coordinates. In three-dimensional space, we navigate with height, width, and depth. The fourth dimension introduces time, allowing motion, change, and a perceived progression. These are dimensions measurable with tools, devices, mathematics. But the fifth dimension exists in a domain beyond tools and measurements. It emerges in the subtle interface between perception and existence. It is felt, not calculated. It is intuited, not deduced. The access point is not a wormhole or portal. It's a state of consciousness. That means it opens not when we move outward, but inward. This is not a journey of miles, but of frequency. Consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, not a chemical reaction in gray matter. It is the projector of the very reality we experience. The fifth dimension reveals itself when you shift your frequency of awareness, when the bandwidth of your perception increases beyond the binary filters of survival and logic. When this happens, the world doesn't change, you change your relationship with it. In this altered state of consciousness, you begin to notice things you previously ignored or dismissed. You sense patterns and connections between events that seemed random before. Synchronicities increase. Your dreams become more vivid, sometimes eerily predictive. You might begin to sense the emotions or thoughts of others without them saying a word. You begin to feel time not as a straight line, but as a sphere, past, present, and future shimmering simultaneously in potential. These are not hallucinations, They are indications that your perception is extending into the fifth dimensional field. This extension does not come through intellectual effort. You cannot force it with logic or solve it with equations. It comes through a surrender of old mental constructs. The ego, which thrives on control and definition, must loosen its grip for consciousness to flow into this higher dimensional awareness. Ironically, you reach it not by striving harder, but by relaxing deeper. Not by seeking more, but by shedding the false. The fifth dimension begins where the illusion of separation ends. It's where subject and object dissolve into participation. In the physical world, we are taught to believe in the solidness of matter, the objectivity of events, the independence of the external world from the internal observer. But in the fifth dimension, the boundaries begin to blur. Matter is seen as slowed down energy. Thoughts and emotions begin to show their influence on the shape of events. You realize that intention is an architectural force. Every belief becomes a blueprint. Every fear, a seed with the potential to grow a reality around it. What you dwell on internally starts to organize the outer circumstances of your life. This is not magic, not fantasy, and not metaphor. It is a higher order principle of existence becoming accessible to a consciousness that has evolved beyond materialism. In the fifth dimension, every action is understood to have multiple resonances. Karma becomes immediate. Cause and effect are no longer separated by time. They become simultaneous. This is why awareness is key. In a fifth dimensional state, unconsciousness is no longer a safe mode. It reverberates too quickly. Your unexamined assumptions generate tangible ripples. Your internal chaos creates external noise. The fifth dimension requires a kind of inner hygiene. To enter this dimension is to become aware of the patterns running inside you, your beliefs, fears, attachments, and desires, not as private psychological features, but as architects of your visible experience. What you think you are is not just shaping your life, it is your life. There's no escape from this realization in the fifth dimension. You see that the world isn't happening to you, it's happening through you as you. The consciousness that accesses the fifth dimension must be willing to die to what it thought it knew. This is not a comfortable process. It is not gentle. It is not easy. But it is the threshold. You begin to feel as though you're waking up from a long sleep, where everything was bound by weight and delay. Suddenly, thoughts carry immediacy. The feeling in your chest can shift the interaction at your job. A long-held grudge becomes a magnet for repeating cycles. You can't lie to yourself anymore and not feel the burn in your bones. This is the fifth dimension sharpening your senses. In the third and fourth dimensions, we have the luxury of unconscious creation. We act, and the results come later, softened by time, buffered by layers of density. But the fifth dimension strips away the padding. There is no later, there is only now, stretched and folded in all directions. You act and it echoes, you think and it shapes, you believe and it builds. This is why the fifth dimension is often described as a realm of instant manifestation. It's not because the external world suddenly becomes your puppet. It's because your awareness is no longer filtered through the delay of linear time and spatial resistance. As this consciousness unfolds, you start to realize the vast architecture of interconnection. Events that seemed isolated are revealed to be threads in a larger weave. You experience déjà vu not as coincidence, but as signal. You begin to understand that your life is not a random walk through a chaotic world. It is a dialogue between you and the field. The field responds to you, not in words but in mirrors. Every person you meet reflects something unclaimed in you. Every difficulty shows you your resistance. Every joy points to your alignment. You also begin to notice that language starts to fail. The more you dwell in the fifth dimension, the harder it becomes to explain your experiences. They do not fit in cause and effect explanations. They feel circular, holographic, multi-layered. You begin to speak less but feel more. You crave silence not because you're antisocial, but because you've started listening with different ears. You sense energies behind words, intentions behind actions, frequencies behind smiles. The world becomes transparent, and through it, you glimpse the design, but this awareness brings responsibility. In the fifth dimension, you are no longer a passive participant. You are a co-creator, and not metaphorically. Your inner atmosphere matters. It is not optional. If your inner world is full of fear, the outer begins to tremble. If your heart is closed, nothing opens. If your attention is scattered, so too becomes your reality. The fifth dimension demands coherence. It is not a place to escape your life. It is the reality where you face it without filters. This is why many touch the fifth dimension only briefly. They have a peak experience, a dream, a near-death moment, a vision, a psychedelic journey, and then return to the density of normal perception. Why? Because to stay in the fifth dimension, your consciousness must stabilize. You cannot carry distortion with you. It amplifies too fast. You cannot hide behind personas. They disintegrate. You cannot cling to untruths. They turn to ash in your hands. The fifth dimension is clean, not sterile, but clear. It has no tolerance for contradiction. It vibrates in alignment. This clarity does not make life easier in the conventional sense. It makes life truer. You begin to operate from inner authority. You start making decisions based on energy, not logic. You move when it feels right, not when it seems right. You follow nudges, not plans. This is not recklessness. It is alignment with a deeper intelligence, one that doesn't speak in sentences, but in symbols, pulses, synchronicities, and inner knowings. This is how the fifth dimension communicates. You don't hear it, you recognize it. Over time, your inner landscape becomes your compass. You no longer seek validation from external sources. You stop chasing status or security. You realize that peace doesn't come from achieving goals. It comes from dissolving the identity that needs them. In the fifth dimension, fulfillment is not a finish line. It is a frequency you embody. You can be surrounded by chaos and still feel serenity because you are not drawing your signal from the world. You are radiating it into the world. And as you do, the world begins to reshape itself. People treat you differently. Opportunities find you without force. Time bends in small ways. You think of someone and they call. You need something and it shows up. You realize that reality is not fixed. It is reactive. It is a mirror that becomes clearer as your own reflection becomes more integrated. The world stops being a struggle and starts becoming a sculpture. All of this, every phenomenon, every shift, every surreal encounter, is rooted in the simple, revolutionary idea that you did not go somewhere to reach the fifth dimension. You remembered a state of being. You tuned your consciousness to a frequency that was always available but rarely accessed. And in doing so, you stepped into a reality that was hiding in plain sight. Linear time collapses. Belief shapes reality. This is not a metaphor, not poetic language, but a functional observation from the vantage point of higher consciousness. In the conventional framework of the third and fourth dimensions, time is treated as linear, a sequence of past, present, and future, moving in one direction with consistent pacing. It is the invisible thread stitching together moments and memories, the unyielding river upon which all events float. From this limited perspective, Cause precedes effect. A decision made today influences tomorrow. The past is over, the future is unknown, and the present is the fleeting in between. But in the fifth dimension, this structure dissolves. What was believed to be a straight line is revealed as a spiraling, multidimensional weave, where timelines intersect, overlap, and reflect based on the observer's state of consciousness. To say that linear time collapses means that it is no longer the primary mode of organization for experience. Events no longer unfold in predictable cause and effect sequences. Instead, experience becomes more fluid, more immediate, and more intimately shaped by inner orientation than outer circumstance. You may begin to notice that things you thought would take months happen in days, or that something you were certain would unfold has vanished altogether because you changed internally. These are not glitches or coincidences. They are signals that you are interfacing with a realm where belief becomes the principal architect. In this space, belief is not simply an idea or personal opinion. It is a vibrational signature, an instruction embedded in your energetic field. Whatever belief you hold about yourself, others, the world, acts as a lens, filtering reality and shaping it to match your internal blueprint. If you believe that life is struggle, the fifth dimensional field will echo that belief with synchronicity, presenting circumstances that confirm your view. If you believe that you are unworthy, you will be offered reflection after reflection of rejection, stagnation, or disconnection, not as punishment, but as a mirror, an invitation to change your frequency. Time, in the fifth dimension, becomes responsive. It is no longer a distant master, but a malleable ingredient. You begin to experience events out of order, thinking of someone moments before they contact you, dreaming of a future that unfolds the next day, or meeting someone who feels like an echo of something you've not yet lived. This is not imagination running wild. It is your consciousness stepping beyond the linear constraints and tapping into the full field of potential where time is not a path but a palette. You are painting with possibility and your brush is belief. When linear time collapses, so too does the illusion of separation between cause and effect. Your current thoughts are not seeds for future outcomes. They are already part of the unfolding now. In a very real sense, the future is not something you walk into. It is something you call to you through your belief. This is why the shift into fifth dimensional consciousness feels so personal, even intimate. Reality no longer operates as a distant, objective mechanism. It becomes deeply personal, tailored to your inner world. It meets you where you are, not where the clock says you should be. This perspective changes everything. It turns traditional models of effort and success on their heads. In the linear world, success is believed to be the product of time, strategy, and persistence. But in the fifth dimension, success is an echo of alignment. When your beliefs align with your true essence, unencumbered by fear or self-doubt, manifestation becomes almost effortless. You do not chase, you resonate. You do not build, you become. What you believe you are, the field confirms. It does not discriminate between positive and negative. It simply mirrors your frequency. This explains why repeating patterns in life, unfulfilling relationships, financial scarcity, chronic stress persist even when actions are changed. If the belief underneath remains intact, the field cannot shift. The fifth dimension reveals that lasting change is not a matter of behavior, but of identity. Who you believe yourself to be is the command that writes the code of your experience. You can act wealthy while believing in lack. You can speak affirmations while secretly feeling unworthy. The field listens to the feeling, not the words. It responds to vibration, not pretense. This principle is not bound by intention alone. You cannot trick the fifth dimension with superficial belief. It operates at the level of frequency, your deep, often unconscious convictions. That's why inner work becomes essential in this realm. Shadow integration, emotional clearing, and honest self-inquiry are not therapeutic luxuries. They are navigational tools. They clear the distortion from your field so your beliefs can resonate clearly. And when they do, time itself begins to fold around your awareness, opening doors you once thought required effort to reach. Consider the experience of déjà vu in this context. Traditionally viewed as a brain hiccup or psychological anomaly, déjà vu in the fifth dimension is something entirely different. It's an echo from a non-linear memory, moment that already existed in your field of potential, recognized by your consciousness before your physical self arrived. It is a feedback loop between the multidimensional you and the linear storyline you're temporarily playing out. Belief makes the moment real. Your recognition is the proof of convergence. Dreams, too, take on new significance when time becomes non-linear. In the third dimensional perspective, dreams are random firings of the subconscious, symbolic narratives that may or may not hold meaning. But in the fifth dimension, dreams can be previews, parallel existences, or integrations of choices made in different timelines. The only thing determining which becomes physical reality is belief, what you claim as true. You may have a dream that feels more real than waking life. That's not your imagination running wild. That's a memory from a version of you already walking that path. Belief is the doorway through which that reality walks into your waking world. Because belief shapes reality so directly in the fifth dimension, fear becomes a powerful creative agent, often unintentionally. The moment you fear an outcome and emotionally invest in it, the field begins to shape around it. This is why mastering your inner state is not optional in this dimension. You are holding the steering wheel, whether you like it or not. The more aware you become of your own beliefs, the more deliberate your creations become. You realize that nothing is just happening to you. Everything carries a fingerprint, yours. Even collective events begin to reveal this principle. Groups, societies, even entire civilizations generate shared fields of belief. These collective beliefs shape the probability field and influence what kind of global events become tangible. Wars, revolutions, awakenings, and collapses are not arbitrary. They are co-creations born from converging belief systems. When a critical mass believes in instability, the fifth dimension provides matching conditions. When that mass shifts toward healing, peace begins to unfold in the world stage, not instantly, but undeniably. This is why the fifth dimension cannot be fully understood from a scientific, materialist lens. Its mechanisms are subtle, nonlinear, and deeply subjective. Science can measure physical outcomes, but in this domain, the causes are not visible. They exist in the field of thought, emotion, and resonance. That does not make them less real, only less easily observed by external instruments. In the fifth dimension, the most sensitive instrument is your own consciousness. Your state of being is your diagnostic tool. When time collapses, you no longer look at calendars to measure progress. You look at your alignment. Alignment becomes the metric. If you feel peace, clarity, and openness, you are in tune with the flow of the field. If you feel constriction, confusion, or resistance, you are fighting your own belief loops. It is not about good or bad emotion, but about coherence. Are your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs moving in harmony, or are they fragmented, contradicting each other? In a world where belief shapes reality instantly, incoherence becomes chaos. Coherence becomes creation. And here's the catch. You can't fake coherence. You can't chant affirmations while carrying bitterness in your chest and expect miracles. The fifth dimension reads what you are, not what you say. The collapse of time means you don't have the luxury of delay to buffer your misalignment. You can no longer wait for external proof before shifting belief. You must shift belief before the proof arrives. Faith, once seen as irrational, becomes functional. Trusting the unseen is no longer spiritual fluff, it's spiritual precision. This explains why the fifth dimension often feels paradoxical at first. To change your reality, you must believe it has changed before it does. You must embody the version of yourself who already has the outcome you desire. This is not delusion, it is quantum instruction. The moment you believe you are already in alignment with that version, the field begins to organize accordingly. People appear, events rearrange, opportunities synchronize. Not because you forced them, but because you shifted the signal you're broadcasting. In a linear world, you work toward goals. In the fifth dimension, you collapse the distance between you and the goal by changing your state. Time is no longer the bridge, belief is. You do not manifest things in the future. You bring the vibration of that future into now. The future becomes a frequency, not a date. You tune to it, and it arrives. As this understanding deepens, you begin to loosen your grip on outcomes. You stop obsessing over timelines, milestones, or sequences. You start trusting your frequency. You realize that if you're aligned, what you need will appear. Not always as expected, not always with fireworks, but with accuracy. The fifth dimension doesn't deliver based on your plan. It delivers based on your essence. What matches your belief field finds you. What doesn't falls away. This is not rejection, it is calibration. And so, as linear time dissolves and belief rises as the primary architect, the power dynamic of your life transforms. You are no longer waiting for a better moment, a clearer sign, a safer path. You become the moment, you become the sign, you become the path, and reality in turn reflects the version of you you're finally willing to believe in. The idea that emotion overrides logic in the fifth dimension is not merely a reflection of preference or personality. It is a fundamental shift in how reality organizes itself around consciousness. In the dimensions where logic dominates, decisions are weighed, outcomes are calculated, and safety is prioritized through mental forecasting. The rational mind becomes the governing authority, praised for its ability to dissect, strategize, and categorize. Emotions, by contrast, are often seen as distractions, subjective, chaotic, unreliable. But in the fifth dimension, this entire hierarchy flips. Emotion becomes the organizing principle, the signal that shapes timelines, magnetizes experience, and bends the fabric of unfolding reality in accordance with vibrational frequency. In this space, logic still exists, but it is no longer the master. It is a tool, secondary, supportive, and responsive to the emotional field. Emotion, in the fifth dimension, is not just a reaction, it is a creative force. It is the way energy flows through the system of self. It is how the field is read, interpreted, and restructured. The frequency of emotion is more powerful than the structure of thought because emotion vibrates, emotion radiates, emotion transmits. Where logic attempts to predict outcomes through analysis, emotion calls those outcomes into being through resonance. This is why the fifth dimensional experience feels so dreamlike, fluid, and even unpredictable to the logical mind. The mind expects consistency, but emotion doesn't move linearly. It spirals, it pulses, it swells and contracts in response to layers of unseen context, trauma, intuition, desire, ancestral imprint, and soul memory. In the fifth dimension, your emotional state becomes your compass. Not just a mood or a feeling, but a vibrational code that determines what path opens before you, what people are drawn into your field, what moments materialize out of potential into form. To override logic with emotion doesn't mean to become reckless or irrational. It means you begin to trust the intelligence of your emotional body more than the calculations of your mental narrative. You notice that when you follow what feels alive, things flow. Synchronicities stack. Resistance melts when you follow what feels safe but dead. Life slows down, events drag, joy evaporates. The fifth dimension doesn't reward caution, it rewards coherence. And coherence is only possible when your internal state, especially your emotional field, is aligned with your highest truth. Many people struggle in this realm because they are trained to suppress or distrust emotion. Emotion in the third dimension is inconvenient. In the fifth, it is unavoidable. If you suppress your fear, your field will still broadcast it. If you deny your longing, your field will still resonate with absence. You cannot hide from your own frequency. In this dimension, the emotion you feel is the reality you create. This is why emotional honesty is the first doorway to mastery, not emotional control, not emotional manipulation. Emotional honesty, to walk in the fifth dimension, is to walk with the raw truth of what you feel. And in that truth, you begin to notice something remarkable. The emotion itself begins to alchemize reality. If you feel grief and you meet it fully, reality meets you back with softness. Support appears, light pierces through. If you feel joy and you let it expand, the field responds with alignment. Doors open. People smile. Time bends. The world is no longer a cold mirror. It becomes an empathic listener. It is sculpted not by thoughts alone, but by the vibration those thoughts carry. And that vibration is rooted in emotion. Even love in this space is not a concept. It is a frequency. When you emit the frequency of love, not sentimental, not performative, but real heart-centered coherence, you alter the field around you. People feel it, environments change, resistance drops. This is not mysticism. It is physics at a level mainstream science has yet to quantify. Emotion is frequency. Frequency is structure. Structure determines form. In the fifth dimension, this is not an abstraction. It is operational law. This is also why the fifth dimension can feel unstable to the unprepared. Emotion is not linear. It fluctuates, and so does the field. If you are unconsciously carrying rage, fear, abandonment, or shame, those vibrations ripple outward, not just through your body, but through your timeline. Events shape around them. People mirror them. It is not punishment. It is precision. The fifth dimension forces you to take responsibility for your emotional field, because that field is creating your experience in real time. Many try to bypass this by clinging to logic. They try to make smart decisions while ignoring their emotional truth. They stay in relationships that feel hollow because they make sense. They work jobs that drain their soul because they're stable. They move through life calculating, compromising, surviving. But in the fifth dimension, those structures collapse. If you are not emotionally aligned with what you are doing, life will push back. Synchronicity will dry up. The body will resist. The universe will mirror your inner dissonance until you finally feel. Not think, feel. Emotion overrides logic because it speaks a deeper language. It is the language of soul memory, of vibrational truth, of alignment with your multidimensional self. The mind can lie. Emotion does not. The mind can be trained to repeat stories that keep you safe but small. Emotion, when allowed to speak freely, will always pull you toward liberation. It may feel risky, it may feel uncertain, but it will feel real. And in this realm, realness is the gold. Realness is the signal. Realness is the key. Even intuition functions through this lens. Intuition is not a logical deduction. It is a subtle emotional pull, a knowing without evidence, a certainty without proof. It lives in the body, not the brain. It speaks through sensation, not explanation. And in the fifth dimension, intuition becomes sharper, louder, harder to ignore. Because your emotional field is no longer just your private weather system. It is your dashboard, your map, your power source. If you feel tension, it's a red flag. If you feel peace, it's a green light. You don't need spreadsheets. You need presence. To master this is not to be emotionally reactive. It is to be emotionally attuned. You do not let every passing emotion dictate your behavior, but you do let every emotion inform your awareness. You feel your way forward. You discern vibration more than detail. You walk into a room and you don't just see people. You feel the energy. You meet someone and you don't just hear their words. You sense the frequency behind them. This is not woo. This is high resolution perception, and it is standard in the fifth dimension. This emotional acuity becomes your superpower. You know when to act because the timing feels ripe. You know when to speak because the words land with weight. You know when to leave because the energy no longer fits. You are no longer guessing. You are listening. Not with ears, but with presence. And that presence is made of emotional clarity. This is also why emotional healing becomes so central. You cannot operate clearly in the fifth dimension with an emotionally cluttered field. Unprocessed trauma distorts the signal. Suppressed emotion clouds the frequency. If you haven't faced your inner child, your lineage pain, your heartbreaks, your guilt, they will speak through your field, whether you acknowledge them or not. You cannot outperform your vibration. You can only shift it, and shifting it requires feeling. Feeling becomes your form of navigation. You don't map the terrain from above. You learn to sense it beneath your feet. Your joy is your compass. Your sadness is your feedback. Your longing is your GPS. You no longer shame your emotions. You listen to them. You respect them, because they are no longer just feelings. They are frequency instructions for your timeline. Even desire transforms in this space. Desire is not greed. It is not indulgence. It is vibrational calling. When you feel desire in the fifth dimension, it's not a distraction from your path. It is your path. What lights you up, what stirs your soul, what opens your heart, that's your signal, that's your yes. And when you follow it, the field opens. Resistance only comes when you fight your own frequency, when you try to think your way out of feeling, when you use logic to override your own inner truth. This is the new spiritual intelligence, not the denial of emotion, but the integration of it, not the control of feeling, but the surrender to its guidance. This applies even to collective movements. Emotional fields ripple through societies just as they do through individuals. Mass fear creates conflict. Collective joy creates renaissance. Shared grief births solidarity. These are not poetic interpretations. They are energetic mechanics. Emotion overrides logic, even on a global scale. You cannot reason a world into peace if it is emotionally fractured. You must heal the field. And healing begins with feeling. To operate here, you must stop treating emotions as problems to solve. They are messages to read, they are signals to interpret, and they are instructions to embody. You don't bypass them. You don't wallow in them, you move with them, you let them teach you, you let them show you where you are aligned and where you are still hiding. And when you meet them fully, they do what they came to do. They shift your frequency. The shift is not always immediate. Sometimes the feeling must be sat with, honored, digested. But as you do, you begin to sense the recalibration. You feel the fog lifting, the clarity rising, the field adjusting. And then the world around you starts to shift. Not because you figured it out, but because you felt your way through. Emotion overrides logic not because logic is weak, but because emotion is direct. It speaks in the language of the field. And the field, in the fifth dimension, is always listening. In the fifth dimension, language begins to bend. Words no longer carry the same definitive weight they once did in lower dimensions. In the third dimension, language is form, rigid, categorized, cemented into syntax. It's a vehicle of precision, of boundary, of description. But here, language melts into vibration. It ceases to be just a transmission of information and becomes a transfer of frequency. Every word spoken, or left unspoken, releases a resonance. That resonance doesn't simply tell the listener what you mean. It shows them who you are, where you're vibrating, what you're carrying in your field. Communication in the fifth dimension is no longer about accuracy. It's about alignment. And the language you use, whether external or internal, no longer serves logic first. It serves energy. This shift distorts traditional linguistic frameworks. What is said doesn't always matter as much as how it's said. The emotional subtext, the energetic payload, the tone, the timing, the intention, all of these override the dictionary definitions. In the fifth dimension, the sentence "I love you" can land as a dagger or a bomb depending on the field it's coming from. The words don't carry the meaning anymore, the frequency does. So language becomes less about choosing the right vocabulary and more about maintaining the right vibration. A joke told with clean energy can heal. A compliment given with distortion can wound. You begin to listen less to the content and more to the undercurrent. Communication becomes multidimensional, not verbal, but vibrational. This is why so many in this realm experience a collapse in their need to speak. Verbal language becomes laborious, inefficient, clumsy. There's a longing to speak in light, in color, in feeling, in symbol. There is a desire to bypass the filtration system of spoken words and go straight to transmission. This is because here you're already transmitting at all times. You're already speaking through your frequency, whether you open your mouth or not. Your posture, your eyes, your silence, your presence, these carry more informational density than entire essays. You are the language, your being is the syntax, your frequency is the sentence. In this new field, even thought becomes an act of language, but the thoughts themselves no longer serve just the self. They serve the field. Every thought creates a ripple, not just internally but externally. You begin to realize that your thoughts are not just personal, they are participatory. You are contributing to the architecture of the collective field with every loop you run, every judgment you make, every word you mutter under your breath. Thought becomes sacred, word becomes magnetic. Language becomes a form of energetic architecture. What you say creates structure. What you think creates blueprint. What you feel gives it gravity. And so the careless use of language begins to decay. Gossip burns the tongue. Complaints collapse timelines. Lies throb in the field like static. This is not because there are rules or punishments. It is because your field becomes too sensitive, too crystalline, too tuned. You feel the misalignment instantly. You say something out of fear, and you feel the dissonance immediately in your body. You utter something from an old identity, and you feel the frequency drop. The feedback loop is immediate. The field doesn't wait. It reflects you in real time. This is where integrity evolves. It's no longer about moral right or wrong. It's about energetic congruence. Are you saying what your field truly carries? Are you thinking in ways that match the vibration you say you want to live in? Are you using language to amplify clarity or to avoid truth? In the fifth dimension, there is nowhere to hide. Your words will either harmonize with your field or distort it. And when distortion arises, it must be addressed, not through self-punishment, but through self-listening. Every misaligned sentence is a symptom. Every empty word is a signal. It shows you where you are still fragmented, where your communication is compensating for an incoherence inside. This is also why silence becomes more frequent in this space. Silence is not absence. It is calibration. It is the space where words regenerate their frequency. In lower dimensions, silence is awkward. It's something to be filled, but in the fifth, silence is rich. It holds codes, it allows, it clears. People who operate in this dimension often speak less, not because they are aloof, but because they are precise. They don't speak to fill space. They speak when the frequency is right. They speak when the field opens. They speak when what they have to say adds coherence to the whole. Communication begins to include other layers of expression. Symbols begin to feel more real than sentences. Visuals replace paragraphs. A single gesture can hold the power of a monologue. People begin to read each other, not just physically, but energetically. You don't ask someone how they're doing, you feel their answer. You don't need someone to explain why they left. You sense the vibrational mismatch. Language becomes a redundancy unless it is matched with frequency. This also alters the way truth is experienced. In lower dimensions, truth is debated. In higher fields, truth is felt. You don't convince someone of the truth, you embody it. And your embodiment either creates resonance or it doesn't. When you speak from deep truth, people don't need proof. They feel it in their bones. It activates memory. It stirs recognition. That's why in this realm, a single sentence can change someone's life. Not because of the words, but because of the frequency they carry. Not because of the grammar, but because of the transmission. This is where the concept of light language arises. It is not a trick or a performance. It is the natural emergence of multidimensional speech. It bypasses the rational mind and speaks directly to the soul. Not everyone hears it the same way because it's not meant to be heard. It's meant to be felt. It is frequency made audible. It is vibration encoded in sound. It's a reminder that even traditional languages are just containers for frequency. What matters is not what you say, it's what your field is doing while you say it. This shift in language also affects self-talk. You can no longer bully yourself with your thoughts without consequences. The field responds. Your cells respond. If your inner narrative is filled with harshness, scarcity, doubt, that frequency reverberates. It leaks into your relationships, your body, your creations. Fifth, dimensional beings learn to speak to themselves like artists, like lovers, like sculptors of their own vibration. Self-talk becomes energetic design. Every affirmation is an incantation. Every complaint is a collapse. Every judgment is an erosion. Every blessing is a bloom. You become a conscious narrator of your own timeline. This conscious use of language expands into how you speak about others. You realize that words are spells. If you speak ill of someone, you are casting into their field. If you celebrate them, you are elevating their frequency. Fifth, dimensional communication is not about politeness. It's about frequency, responsibility. It's not about avoiding negativity. It's about recognizing your power. Your words are not neutral. They are tools. They are portals. They are timelines. This also shifts how we handle conflict. In the third dimension, conflict is about winning. In the fifth, it's about clarity. When tension arises, it's not about proving your point. It's about resolving dissonance in the field. Arguments no longer follow the linear pattern of attack and defend. They become mirrors, they become energy exchanges. You begin to feel where communication is stuck, not just in the other person, but in yourself. You learn to name the vibration, not just the issue. I feel contraction becomes more truthful than you're wrong. Something in me tightens when you say that, becomes more productive than you always do this. You stop speaking to control and you start speaking to connect. Eventually, language becomes a sacred act. Not because it is rare, but because it is refined. You speak less, but when you do, you move energy, you heal, you unlock, you initiate. Your words become vessels of remembrance. You no longer speak just to be heard. You speak to harmonize, you speak to bless, you speak to guide, and your field becomes so clear that even your silence communicates volumes. You may also find that certain words or phrases no longer feel right. They carry an old vibration, they drag your field backward. Language evolves in you. You create new phrases. You abandon old scripts. You invent syllables that feel more you. You become less interested in sounding smart and more committed to sounding true. Authenticity overrides eloquence. Simplicity overrides sophistication. What matters most is, does your language match your frequency? This changes everything from relationships to work to creativity. In your relationships, you stop trying to explain your boundaries. You become your boundary. You stop over-talking your needs. You emit them. In your work, you stop writing to impress. You write to align. You create not to get attention, but to stabilize a frequency in the world. In your creativity, you stop producing content. You generate codes. Words become architecture. Art becomes resonance. Expression becomes transmission. In this space, even prayers evolve. You stop begging. You stop bargaining. You start vibrating the frequency of what you desire. You speak as if it's already true, not as a trick, but as a calibration. Thank you for the clarity. Even in the midst of confusion, I remember who I am. Even in the middle of forgetting, your language no longer follows reality, it shapes it. Even your name may start to shift. You feel less identified with labels, titles, or roles. You may hear a name in meditation that feels more you than the one you were given. This is because names carry frequency too. And in the fifth dimension, your identity is not static, it's fluid. You choose words not for consistency, but for coherence. If a new name, or even a new word, holds your current resonance, you honor it, you use it, you let it anchor the version of you that's now emerging. This doesn't mean that everyone around you will understand. Many are still operating in dimensions where language is literal, linear, and logical. They will hear your words but miss your frequency. That's okay. You're not speaking for validation. You're speaking for coherence. The more you anchor your frequency, the more your field speaks louder than your words. Eventually, you don't need to explain. You are the explanation. This is the future of communication. Not more noise, but more nuance. Not more words, but more resonance. Not more talking, but more transmitting. Language in this space is not a tool of the mind. It is an instrument of the soul. You play it with presence. You tune it with truth. You wield it with reverence, because you know now that every word is a world. Every sentence is a spell. Every phrase is a pathway. And every vibration you emit becomes your reality.